My wife Jenna and I owned a vacation rental property in the busy tourist town of Seaside for several years. We listed the cute little beach bungalow on Airbnb, a popular short-term rental website, and at first it seemed like easy money. The location was perfect, just 2 blocks from the beach, and we furnished it with nice, coastal chic decor. For a while, everything was great. The property booked up months in advance, and the money we made from all the short-term guests added up quickly. The perks of using Airbnb instead of a traditional long-term rental were clear. We had the potential to make a lot more money, especially during peak tourist season. And since we lived just 10 minutes away in the nearby town of Shoreline, it didn't seem like managing the property would be too difficult. I already worked from home most days as an accountant, and Jenna worked at a restaurant in town and had a flexible schedule. We thought we could handle the extra work of turning the place over between guests. In the beginning, Jenna and I were thrilled with how well the Airbnb listing was doing. We loved reading the 5-star reviews from happy guests raving about their seaside getaways. It made all the scrubbing, washing, and running around feel worthwhile. But as more and more bookings came rolling in, the work became exhausting. Our property was starting to stay booked every single weekend, and often during the week as well, which meant non-stop laundry, constant communication with guests, and an endless parade of check-ins and check-outs. The relentless shuffle of short-term guests also meant things around the house took a beating quickly. We were constantly having to replace cheap furniture, repair appliances, touch up paint and spackle holes in the walls. I swear, we must have bought 4 new sets of dishes and utensils the first year alone because items would get lost or broken so frequently. And no matter how thoroughly we cleaned, complaints started coming in about the place being dirty or not stocked with enough paper towels or toilet paper. We quickly learned that people on vacation tend to use triple the household items and generate way more trash than regular tenants. After about 2 years, the novelty of playing host wore off completely. The easy money didn't feel so easy anymore, since earning it required so much time and effort on our part. Screening reservation requests, answering questions, arranging check-ins, driving back and forth for cleaning, and all the errands involved with maintaining a fully furnished property felt like a full-time job on top of our actual jobs. The constant communication and hand-holding many guests expected became extremely irritating. People would text at all hours with inane questions they could have answered themselves by simply reading our detailed listing description. They'd ask us to pick up items from the grocery store or run other silly errands for them. We had some guests who expected full concierge service just because we were the owners. The unpredictability of short-term guests also stressed me out. Even though we started off only allowing 3 to 4 night minimum stays, we'd occasionally get people who would book a single night, roll in at 10 p.m., and then text us non-stop about mysteries like where the forks were or how to turn on the shower. Some guests would arrive with way more people than allowed and then feign ignorance when we confronted them about it. Once we had a booking for a guy celebrating his bachelor party weekend with 5 friends, which turned into 15 people showing up and wrecking the place. By the 3rd year of Airbnb rentals, my wife and I were completely burned out and ready to be done with short-term guests. The money was still decent, but Jenna and I both hated serving as on-call concierges 24/7s for needy tourists. The stress of constantly preparing the property between occupancies and dealing with the accompanying workload was just too much. Unfortunately, we learned firsthand that the downsides of short-term renting tend to outweigh the upsides as time goes on. Things finally came to a head one Saturday evening in early June, the start of peak season, when tourists flock to Seaside. I was relaxing at home with Jenna, looking forward to a rare weekend off. Around 9 p.m, I got a text from a guy named Adam asking to call me. He and his girlfriend Emily had booked our place for a one-night stay. I assumed he had the usual question about where to find extra towels or how to connect to the Wi-Fi. When I answered Adam's call, he got right to the point. The water wasn't working in the house. None of the taps or showers were functioning. I was immediately apologetic, though also confused how that could be possible. I ran through the standard troubleshooting, asking if the sinks were dry or if any error messages appeared when trying to use the appliances. Everything he said indicated the water was just completely off everywhere. Obviously, guests arriving to find no running water is unacceptable, so I knew I had to drop everything and get this fixed. I asked Adam if I could come by right away to inspect the plumbing myself, so I could get a plumber first thing in the morning if needed. He politely agreed, saying they didn't want to be an inconvenience, but appreciated us sorting this out quickly. I hurriedly threw on some real clothes, grabbed my toolbox, and headed to the bungalow. When I pulled up 10 minutes later, I noticed 2 cars in the driveway. A bit odd for a couple on a one-night stay, but maybe they had separate vehicles. I knocked as I entered the code in the front door, but there was no answer or sounds from within. This late on a Saturday, I figured my guests were probably out enjoying the downtown nightlife. The bungalow was pitch black and silent when I entered. I made my way straight to the basement to inspect the main water shutoff valve, expecting to find a leak. But oddly enough, the basement was bone dry. I flipped on the lights, saw the valve was completely closed, and immediately heard water rushing through the pipes as I turned it back on. Why would my guests have manually shut their water off and then lied about it not working? As I stood there puzzled in the basement, I started feeling very uneasy about this whole situation. Just then I heard the basement door open. 3 unfamiliar men clumped down the steps. "Is it fixed?" The first guy asked. It was Adam from the phone. But he and his 2 companions were not the young couple I'd expected. These men looked to be in their 40s or 50s, hardened, weathered faces, rough hands and cheap work clothes. They stared at me silently as I stammered back. Yes, I turned the valve back on just now. Not sure why it was off in the first place. Probably just got bumped by accident. I edged toward the stairs, discomfort growing. "Well, great. Thanks for coming by so late to check on it," the man said flatly. I hurried up the steps, skin prickling as I felt them watching me. Something was very wrong here. As I rushed out of the house, I noticed one man had a handgun tucked into his waistband. Heart pounding, I jumped in my car and sped off. Who were those creepy men? Why had they requested I come over late at night under false pretenses? And why didn't they accost me in that vulnerable basement when they clearly had sinister intent? I had never been so terrified. As soon as I got home, I called the police and reported the suspicious incident. They sent a patrol car over, but found the house empty. The men had fled shortly after I left. It turned out Adam's Airbnb account was brand new, and he had paid with a stolen credit card. He and his accomplices were fraudsters up to no good, though I still don't understand exactly what their plan was. Needless to say, that frightening night was the last straw. We immediately removed the seaside bungalow listing from Airbnb and found a nice long-term tenant instead. No more dealing with strangers trumping through our property. It simply wasn't worth the risk and aggravation for us anymore. Our experience serves as a cautionary tale that short-term renting has a dark side. Attracted by the potential profits, hosts can get in over their heads with the demands and headaches involved. And worst case, you can end up renting to dangerous criminals using fake identities as we did. Proceed with extreme care before converting your property into a vacation rental. It was supposed to be a week of serene isolation in the countryside to celebrate my 30th birthday. No partner, no friends, just me alone to reset mentally before entering a new decade of life. Little did I know the unspeakable horror that awaited inside that quaint rural cottage retreat. As an introvert, solitary trips allow me to recharge in nature's quiet embrace. My soul yearns for that forgotten connection modern life smothers. Renewal comes from disconnecting from the cold devices and distractions that dominate our age. Time and space for contemplation and inward focus matters deeply to me. So when a friend recommended the Airbnb listing, it seemed perfect. A cozy cottage nestled deep in the remote Appalachian wilderness. The photos depicted an idyllic scene. Vaulted ceilings and skylights blending seamlessly with the surround forest, allowing Mother Nature's glory to pour in. The owner, Ron, was a kindly old man who built the cottage himself decades ago. His enthusiasm won me over during our initial messages. He described the history and care he poured into every handcrafted detail. Ron said past guests found the cottage remarkably peaceful and private, the essence of natural solitude. The remote location should have given me pause. Yet something felt fated about this find, arriving just when I sought its promise. The price was unbelievably reasonable for such a unique experience. I silenced any niggling doubts and booked the cottage for 7 days. Ron sent detailed directions marked by winding dirt forest roads rarely traveled. Modern life felt happily distant once I turned off the last rural route. But the area emitted a certain heavy aura. Something dark and hungry lurked in these forgotten hollows few dare disturb. I pressed on, eager to glimpse the stone and timber cottage soon. Rounding a moss-draped bend, it finally appeared. Charming, as advertised, with a weathered timber door flanked by vines. Beside it stood Ron, waving warmly. I exhaled, relieved to see another human out here. We exchanged friendly greetings, and he handed me the keys, letting me know he lived just down the hill if any issues arose. Stepping inside, the cottage proved cozy, yet something felt off. The natural wood and stone finishes exuded rustic charm, but the details unsettled me. Furniture and mirrors stood at awkward angles, shadows gathering dust in the corners. The air smelled earthy yet medicinal, stale and mouldy. I paused, detecting something more alarming under the familiar sense of pine and cedar. An unplaceable feeling that this dwelling's foundations contained veins of darkness reaching up through the relics of light. Nonsense, I dismissed with a shudder. I flipped on lamps to chase away the shadows and unload my bags. That first evening I FaceTimed my friend, seeking affirmation I wasn't losing my mind. She adored the look and feel of the place, gushing, "It's perfect, so jealous." I sighed knowingly. Of course, it was just first night jitters in unfamiliar woods. I finished unpacking and went to bed early, lulled by crickets and rustling leaves. I awoke hours later, choked by a sensation of dread. A violent chill oozed down my spine. In the darkness, I saw the cottage door yawning open, letting in a swirling vortex of night air. Heart racing, I leaped up, certain I had locked and chained that door securely before bed. Slamming it closed, I slid the chain into place with trembling hands. I flicked on lights and scanned the room, but nothing else appeared disturbed. The only signs an intruder passed were the leaves and dirt scattered across the floor. Yet a sinister presence still lingered, its malevolent energy palpable in the air. Peering outside, only gently swaying pines moved in the moonlight. The tangled forest stood sentinel, concealing any mysteries in its depths. No human could have invaded so stealthily and fled so swiftly. Sleepwalking didn't explain unlocking chains. Only an ancient evil that walked here still could defy such boundaries. A nervous breakdown seemed the only plausible explanation. In bed again, sleep eluded me. The wind howled violently outside as if possessed. Shadows oozed along the walls, assuming grotesque forms in the corners. At some point, exhaustion defeated fear, sending me into fitful, nightmare-filled slumber. The next days, I struggled to focus on my original purpose for the trip. Meditating brought no serenity, journaling no inspiration. I drifted around the cottage tense and restless, nerves frayed. Each little creak or rustle made me flinch, evoking unwelcome images of claws scraping outside. One afternoon while napping, I sensed a malignant presence hovering in the hallway. My eyes shot open, and I whispered hoarsely, "Who's there?" No response came at first. Then a faint yet familiar cackle sounded, increasing my horror. I yelled, "Leave me alone," instinctively grabbing a fire iron from beside the bed. I charged into the hall ready to strike, but found only dust swirling the rays of sunlight. No footprints marked the floor, just traces of the phantom's aura retreating back into the ether. I roamed every room calling out, demanding whatever walked here show itself. But my only answers were crooning birds and creaking timber. At dawn the next day, I fled the cottage, leaving the door swaying open behind me. No explanation felt plausible except that an ancient evil lingered in these hills, defying reason and locks alike. Some doors should stay closed no matter the bargain offered. Places forgotten by time often guard damnable secrets. I thanked Ron hastily for the refund and sped from that haunted valley, racing toward the rational familiar. Yet part of me knew the darkness is patient, always searching for those foolhardy enough to seek bargains in its domain. In life, many beautiful doors offer entrance, but some lead only to darkness posing as the light. In the years since, I've learned to trust my intuition no matter the temptation. Because once you open the wrong door, no chain nor barricade will keep what lurks on the other side contained forever. It will creep back in through the cracks and bide its time, threatening all you hold dear. But despite my warnings, others still seek short-lived rewards in perilous terrain. One such idealistic traveler was my friend Gwen. A budding photographer, she saw beauty and art everywhere she gazed. When she gushed to me about an affordable month-long forest cottage rental she'd found, my blood ran cold. I knew Gwen's exuberant spirit was ripe for snaring by patient predatory forces. She had always been spellbound by nature's splendor but blind to its dark undercurrents. I urged Gwen not to go, pleading she instead join me on a trip to Greece's idyllic beaches. But her mind was made up. The forest called to her creative soul. And so I reluctantly bid her farewell on that sunny June morning as she packed her SUV for the mountains. I made her promise to check in with me daily no matter what. In my heart, I knew this trip was a grave mistake. The bargain was too good, the circumstances too aligned with my uncautionary tale. If evil resided in that cottage, it would be thrilled for another visitor to victimize. When Gwen first arrived at the charming timber and stone cottage, she messaged exclaiming it was even better than advertised. Over FaceTime, I inspected the surroundings, hunting for any red flags. But all looked peaceful, even beautifully rustic. Gwen's smitten eyes saw only whimsical nooks begging to be captured through a lens. Perhaps time had exorcised any lingering darkness from this place, I tried convincing myself. That first evening, we chatted long into the night. The fresh forest air had replenished her inspiration, she claimed. Dusk's pastel light filtering through the trees produced an ethereal glow begging to be photographed. Her voice brimmed with joy, recounting a swim in a crystalline stream running beside the cottage earlier. My anxiety eased hearing Gwen so content. Each night for a week we spoke, and all seemed tranquil. But on day 8, Gwen's tone shifted. She described being unable to concentrate on work, instead overcome by fatigue and headaches. I asked if the cottage felt stranger for some reason. She dismissed it as altitude sickness, but agreed something felt off there lately. My heart sank, recognizing the omen. When we spoke the next night, Gwen sounded drained and agitated. The headaches had worsened despite medication, and her sleep was plagued by bizarre nightmares. About what, she shuddered to describe over the phone. Her creative fervor had withered too, an impenetrable malaise clouding her motivation and senses. It pained me realizing too late that the darkness had only been seducing Gwen by wearing a mask of light before revealing its true hunger. I urged her to leave immediately and meet me anywhere she wished. But Gwen stubbornly insisted on honoring her rental commitment, certain this phase would pass. That was the last conversation we ever had. The next day, Gwen stopped responding to increasingly panicked texts and calls. I sped to the cottage myself 2 mornings later, sirens in my mind. Her SUV sat there neatly packed. But my knock solicited no answer. I circled the cottage, shouting desperately, then forced the front door, which swung open too easily. Inside, Gwen's belongings sat undisturbed yet covered in a thin film of dust somehow. No signs of struggle or hurried packing, but no sign of Gwen either, just a lingering odor in the air like singed electronics and burnt hair. The evil that dwelled here had pulled her into its dark web. That much I knew instantly. I left the cottage door swinging violently on splintered hinges, any last purification rituals futile. Whatever dwelled within these cursed walls had taken my dear friend. No authorities ever uncovered her body or clues about the sinister forces that snatched her away. But I knew in my soul Gwen was gone, body and spirit consumed by an ancient starving darkness. In some forsaken hollows, time stands still and primal hungers reign eternally. Those who trespass seeking temporal delights often pay a lasting price. We crave the beauty and inspiration nature offers, but must not forget the nefarious beings that walk alongside that splendor. Some doors should never be opened, no matter the perceived bargain. I was staying at a small 2-bedroom Airbnb during a road trip I took last summer. The place was just a short-term stopover on my way to another rental that would serve as my main vacation accommodation. I booked it since it was conveniently located halfway between my home and the next Airbnb. When I arrived in the peaceful suburban neighborhood that evening, the Airbnb looked quiet and tidy as expected. I did a quick walkthrough of the empty house to get familiar with the layout before hauling in my suitcase and collapsing onto the living room sofa. It was around 8 p.m. by then. As I started dozing off, the sudden loud ringing of the doorbell jolted me awake. I looked over at the front door, confused and unnerved. As a young woman traveling solo, unexpected visitors frightened me, especially at night. I slowly got up and walked to the door, hearing 2 male voices whispering outside. The door didn't have a peephole or safety chain, so I kept it shut and called out nervously, "Hello." "Hey, we're here for the Airbnb. Can you open up?" A man responded. Still peering through the closed door, I asked loudly what he meant, not following why strangers would show up claiming to be guests. The man explained impatiently that he had booked a place for tonight. That made no sense, since I had personally reserved these dates weeks ago. I yelled through the door that some mistake must have happened, and he'd have to contact the owner. The man sounded annoyed, but I heard him walk away to discuss with his companion. The other man then knocked again, asking politely if I could open the door so we could straighten this out. I hesitated, hand on the knob. His calm demeanor seemed trustworthy, but something told me not to let my guard down. "Just give me a minute, my husband will be right down." I lied, wanting them to think others were present. The man said nothing, but I didn't hear footsteps descending the porch steps. After a long minute of silence, I cautiously peered out the window. My blood turned to ice at the terrifying sight. Down the driveway stood at least 5 more figures lurking by a row of cars. They wore bandanas over their faces and stared intently at the house, as if waiting for a signal. It immediately became clear. This wasn't just a rental mix-up. The presence of multiple masked strangers likely meant a planned home invasion. I backed away from the window in sheer panic, heart pounding. Were they waiting for me to open the door and overpower me? I rushed to the bedroom to grab my phone and call 911 with trembling hands. All around the house, I could hear echoing footsteps and hushed voices. It was like being surrounded by a pack of hungry predators. The 911 operator told me to get somewhere secure and remain quiet. Help was on the way. I locked myself in the bathroom, muting my sobs while the dispatcher stayed on the line. The operator assured me I'd be safe if I stayed hidden and silent. Soon I heard the terrible splintering of wood. The men were breaking down the front door. They poured into the house, frenziedly opening every cabinet and drawer. One finally approached the bathroom yelling, "She's in here," before giving up and moving on. The looters rampaged through the Airbnb grabbing valuables. Just as the distant wail of sirens sounded, the group scattered and fled. Officers searched the house and took my statement. The burglars had taken everything worth stealing, including my luggage. The police explained this was the work of an organized theft ring targeting short-term rentals. The gang scopes out Airbnbs, then breaks in when guests have their guard down. They want to grab loot, not harm people. Staying hidden in the bathroom likely saved me from their wrath. Nonetheless, the experience was traumatizing. I still get anxious flashes whenever I stay at an Airbnb now, even though I know the odds of something like that happening again are extremely slim. But the helplessness I felt huddled in that bathroom, while danger lurked feet away, will haunt me forever. Ever since, I only book full apartment rentals with security systems and deadbolts. And I try to choose busier areas rather than remote neighborhoods. But deep down, part of me worries that unchanged door code could once again deliver sinister strangers to my temporary doorstep. All the precautions in the world can't eliminate the inherent vulnerability of staying unguarded in foreign, easily accessible property. For that reason, I'll probably never again feel truly relaxed on an Airbnb getaway. The anonymity of the platform means you never really know who else has access to the property. Guests' innate trust in hosts and verification systems was shattered for me that night. I learned hosts can unknowingly double book, and criminal minds are always looking for blind spots to exploit. While Airbnb claims incidents like mine are 1 in a million flukes, the truth is short-term rentals introduce risks you'd never face checking into a hotel. From the outside, families laughing on front porches and welcome signs on front doors project a charming illusion. But behind the digital listings and 5-star reviews, darkness often lurks closer than we dare imagine once we step through those unlocked doors. My cautionary tale proves that terrible things can happen even in safe neighborhoods and routine lodgings. So think twice before letting your guard down completely on your next urban or rural rental getaway. Make sure multiple tight locks and alarms stand between you and any stranger who may call that property address home, even if just for the night.